In this video, I'm going to show you how to prep and prime new drywall. So if you just had drywall installed and there's dust all over the walls and you know how to remove it, or if you need to know the fastest way to apply a primer, well then this video is for you. And if you're new to this channel, my name's Josh. This channel is all about building your own house, saving a ton of money. So be sure to subscribe, ring that bell so you get a notification every time I release a new video, and hammer that like button for me. That's all I ask in return for making this video. So the first thing we need to do is get that dust off the walls, so let's get started. After drywall is freshly hung and finished, if you look real close on it, there's going to be dust all over it like you see here. All that dust is going to clump together and cause problems while you're painting. You're going to get lumps and humps all over the place if you don't get it off now. So that's what we're going to address first. The first thing we're going to have to do to prep this house for painting is remove the dust off the ceilings and walls and floor. So you want to go in that order because the gravity is going to work in your favor. So if you start at the ceiling, knocking the dust off, it goes on the wall, then you dust the wall off, then it goes onto the floor, then you vacuum up the floor and everything's good to go. So I'll always wear a mask or a respirator of some kind so that way you don't breathe in all this dust while you're working. I'm actually going to have it off at first though so you can clearly hear what I'm saying because it's really muffled if I put this on. Can you hear me now? Probably not too good. All right, so let's go ahead and get started on this ceiling. I'm going to show you how I get the dust off of it. First place I start the dust removal process is in the far back corner ceiling of a room. Once I'm there, I go ahead and place it tight into the crease to where the wall and ceiling meets. Once I get to the end of the room, I make a figure 8 motion and go back the way I came, making sure I covered all the square footage of the ceiling. And you also want to wear safety glasses while you're doing this because a lot of particles will fall down off ceiling, so you don't want that in your eye. And after so many swipes, you want to make sure you wring the dust mop out outside. This is a smaller dust mop, so I got to wring it out after each bedroom ceiling and after each bedroom wall or two. So it doesn't hold very much dust, but a bigger dust mop you could probably do a whole room with. So just so you know, but definitely make sure you wring it out periodically. So now that all the ceilings are done, it's time to address the walls. I want to show you how to do this wall here behind me. Same idea, start at the top of the wall, go ahead and go across tightly where the ceiling meets the wall. And then once you get to the end, I just swipe down. So any dust falls to the floor, go ahead and step down a foot or two, go back across, and once you hit the corner, swipe down, and then do that repeatedly until you have covered the whole wall. Pretty simple. With a little practice, you'll have it down in no time. The dust mop works great for getting the bulk of the dust off the ceilings and walls, but what it doesn't do is get in the corners where the ceilings and walls meet. So that's where a little brush comes in handy. So it doesn't have to be a cut brush. Any typical brush would be fine, but I just happen to have a spare cut brush here. So all you gotta do is go ahead, almost like you're painting the corner of the ceilings here and wall, and just go ahead and knock the dust out of there. That's really the best way I found to get that out of the corner. And you don't want to keep that in there because it'll all cake and make that corner look rounded after you paint it, and you don't want that. If the temperature permits outside, if it's above 55, what I do like to do after I do all of that is go through with a leaf blower. This is an electric leaf blower. My shop vac turns into one, and I'll blow off the ceilings and walls kind of the same fashion that I did when I knocked the dust off with the dust mop. So I'll just start back in the corner and blow it all off. All right, you can really see the dust come off when I do that. So it's just a little extra to get that off, but it definitely is worth it if you can do it, if the heat permits. And also wear your respirator. I just have mine off right now so I can talk to you. You just seen a lot of dust come off those walls. That's because I didn't dust mop it yet. I just wanted to show you what it looked like if you did it on a fresh wall that hasn't been dust mopped. Now, if I did that after I was done dust mopping, you wouldn't have had near that dust come off. Just wanted to let you know that. All right, now that all the dust is knocked off the walls and ceilings, let's go ahead and address the floor. Since we don't want to fight gravity, we started dusting from the ceiling, hit the walls, now we got to address the floor. As we were dusting, a lot of particles were falling down to this floor, so what we need to do now is take a shop vac and vacuum up all the floor. And you can sweep it first if you want and then shop vac, but I prefer just to hit it with the shop vac. It makes it quicker, I think. And something really important you need to do is take the shop vac and vacuum out all the outlets and switches and hit the debris off the edges of the drywall that's around it, because if you don't, while you're hitting it with your roller, it's going to collect a lot of that debris and it's going to end up in your paint, and you don't want that. All right, now that we addressed the prep work, let's go ahead and start priming this room. If you haven't noticed already, I'm wearing lighter colored clothes now. That's because when I'm priming, sometimes I tend to get a little bit on my shirt, and it's not very noticeable if I'm wearing white. So if I'm wearing that black shirt, it's very noticeable. All right, so the product I want to show you first is this Valspar brand PVA primer. I got this from Lowe's for about $50 for 5 gallons, and it covers about 200 square feet. And this is PVA. So what PVA stands for is polyvinyl acetate, and what it does is seals the new drywall very well, so it's very important to do that before applying your regular paint. A couple other items I'm going to show you that I use to cut in the primer is this handy paint pail, and this came from Amazon, and what I like about it has these disposable liners that I can just switch out between primer and paint in different colors. And I got it's called Purdy brand. The brand's actually called Purdy. And this is a 2.5-inch cut brush. I like to use a 2.5-inch for primer because it lets me put a liberal amount of the primer on it, so when I'm applying it, I don't have to dip it as much. And then I always like to wear vinyl gloves or latex gloves, so that way when I'm painting, I don't get a bunch on my hands and it dries my hands out, because I have a problem with dry hands for some reason, so they end up cracking if I don't. So that's just what I use. And any of these products can be found in my Amazon store. The link is in the description below. And if you do make a purchase, I get a small commission, which is at no extra cost to you. So we're going to cut in around the ceilings and walls, and then after that we're going to roll. But let me go ahead and show you how I apply the cut in. All right, and because I need to use this spout to pour into that little pail, I'm not going to crack it open and stir it. So what I'm going to do is just give it a nice shake for just about 5 minutes, just to mix up all the ingredients. And you can also shake it differently too, however you want to do it, but this is just how I prefer to do it. So now what you got to do is pull this little tab to open up the spout. Pops right off, and you always need to have your brush ready for any paint that gets on the lid after you pour it. So I'm going to go ahead and set this down to the side, and I always carry a rag with me because that comes in handy a lot of times. So we're going to set that right there, and then we're going to pour in about 3/4 of the way full with this primer. And this primer seems to be a pretty good quality primer. This is one I typically use as my go-to. For the price, it's hard to beat. All right, and now we'll just go ahead and brush the remaining amount of primer back into the bucket. So I'm up on a step ladder in the corner of this room. So anywhere where the ceiling meets the wall or the walls meet the wall in these corners, we need to cut them in using this 2.5-inch brush. So all you gotta do, take your paint pail that has primer in it, dip it in just, an inch or two, nothing fancy. And then what we wanna do is just make swipes up into the corners and around the whole room, just like this. It's nothing that complicated, but you got to do it because your roller can't get into these corners, so you want to get a nice coverage with your primer. So it's very important to do. And you also do this with paint as well. I don't know how much experience you have with painting, but cutting in is always done before you roll. Now that the cutting end's done, it's time to start rolling. The secret to rolling on a lot of paint fast is using an 18-inch roller. If you have a whole house to do, I highly recommend using one of these versus a 12-inch roller. This thing covers so much square footage in one swipe, it's amazing. This is the Purdy brand, and this is a Purdy brand roller, and this is a 1/2-inch nap. And it's a nylon polyester roller cover, and it's one I always use for primer, and I have had no problems with it. So now that you know what I'm going to be rolling with, let's go ahead and fill up our paint pail with paint. So obviously when you have an 18-inch roller, you need a bigger pail. So I got that here, and I'm going to go ahead and pour this in just like so. And you don't want to overfill it to where you're going to have so much paint in here that you can't get your roller into it properly. All right, and that's a good start. And now I'm just going to use my paintbrush that I used earlier to catch the paint and put it back in the pail. And what I like to do, so the paint doesn't dry out on the brush until the next time I use it, is I'll put it inside this plastic baggie so it doesn't dry out. And that way you don't get chunks in it later. So just take your paintbrush, put it right inside the plastic baggie and just seal up right to the handle. And then it keeps it nice and fresh for a while. Just like we did the dusting, we're gonna start on the ceiling first. So because we're gonna be working overhead, some paint has potential of coming down on us. So what I like to wear is what's called a bunny suit. And it just goes over your whole body, just a thin layer. And so that way you don't have to worry about getting paint all over your clothes and everything else. And this is pretty nice because has a little hood on it, so all we gotta do is zip it up like that. And I gotta leave a little bit down here so you can hear my mic for now. But I'm gonna go ahead and take my hat off and put this hood over my head. And then I got a pair of goggles that I put on like this. So now my eyes are protected as well. I know it's goofy looking, but I don't like to ruin my clothes and I don't like getting primer in my eyes. So let's go ahead and get started rolling these ceilings. So the first thing we gotta do is get paint, or primer I should say, onto the roller. So go ahead and just keep rolling it across the pail until you have a nice coverage on the roller. All right, now all we gotta do, go ahead and start in the corner of the room and keep rolling back and forth in a W pattern and kind of blend it in as you go. And sometimes you gotta go back and blend it all together if you notice a light spot to where it didn't get a lot of coverage, but you more or less just do a W pattern across the whole ceiling. And don't be afraid to put an adequate amount of primer on your roller. So about like that, and go across the whole ceiling doing that method. I just finished all the ceilings in this room, and as you can see, they're speckling all over these goggles. So good thing I had them on or it would have been in my eye. And it might be funny, like I said, to wear this stuff, but I think it's definitely critical to keeping you protected. So now we're going to dress the walls. So just like the ceilings, all we got to do is put a liberal amount of primer on our roller, and same idea, other than now we're on walls. So go ahead and start by making a nice swipe up and down, and then we just want to make a W pattern up and down the whole wall, just like that. And be sure to get the roller at least up to where you cut before, so about like that. And don't be afraid to put enough paint on your roller. So really important not to skimp. So you shouldn't really have to push too hard to get all the primer out of the roller, but you're definitely going to have to apply some kind of pressure. So up and down, and look how much square footage that 18-inch roller covers. I mean, that's why I love it. 12-inch roller, it would have been only done about 2/3 of this amount already. So that's all there is. A little bit of money up front to get the 18-inch roller, but it definitely pays off given the time it saves you. So I'm going to go ahead and roll this whole room, and then I'm going to show you what to do next. Oh yeah, I can also remove these goggles now and this headwear, so I can breathe a little easier. I'm going to go ahead and keep the bunny suit on just because I don't feel like taking it off right now, but let's get to rolling these walls. Since this primer is latex based, it's going to look splotchy when you first apply it, but once it dries, it's going to dry solid, and it's going to be a solid white in this case. So as you can see, the wall here behind me, it's been sitting for about 4 hours or so, and it's completely dried. So while the primer was being rolled on, there's going to be little chunks of dirt and whatnot that gets mixed in with it that you just can't see while you're applying it. So once it's dried, you're going to look down the walls and inspect for any chunks of dirt or any humps or bumps in the drywall that needs fixed now before applying your second coat of primer. But before we do that, what we're going to do is go through with 180 grit sandpaper. It's not very aggressive sandpaper, and what we need to do is just go over the ceilings and walls lightly, about like that, to knock off any loose debris or anything that could have been in the paint that we couldn't see. And then, like I said, even after we do that, we're going to inspect it to make sure we got everything, and then we'll apply a second coat of primer. The first coat of primer is now sanded, and that didn't take hardly any time at all to do this whole room. And now it's ready for the second coat of primer. I looked at the drywall real quick and didn't notice anything that needed fixed or anything like that. So we're ready to go for the second coat of primer. But I'm not going to bore you with that. You apply the second coat the exact same way you applied the first coat. And if you are not familiar with my channel, I build houses from the ground up. I do the whole thing almost by myself. I get help here and there, but for the most part, it's just me and a hammer or a sanding pole, and I'm going at it by myself. And be sure to check out my Amazon store, that you'll find all the products that I use while I'm building my houses, except for some things that you got to get at local hardware stores like paint and drywall mud and etc. Stuff that you can't ship on Amazon. But for the most part, everything else is in there. And again, I want to say thanks a lot for watching. My name's Josh. Be sure to subscribe, ring that bell, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Have a good one. Thanks.